Well, it looks like that went through pretty quick. Hey, I'm the Expert Layman, and today I'm going to be talking warrior tank weapons and the age-old debate of fast versus slow. Going to be going through a few different things. The first thing that I wanted to go through is how rage generation works, and we'll start with the there's a nice little tool that'll let you plug in your weapon speed, and it'll show you how much rage you get per swing. But if you put the weapon swing at once, it'll show you how much rage per second you generate based on your white damage DPS. And your white damage is your auto attacks. Nothing special, just your regular auto attack. And one thing that tends to muddy this debate is some people don't always understand that you only get rage from your white attacks. You can also get rage from Unbridled Wrath and shield specialization, and of course you get rage from taking damage. But right now we're just talking about the rage you get from dealing damage. And if you look at this graphic, somewhere around 600 DPS and white damage will get you about 10 rage. Now that's a lot of auto attack damage, so most tanks aren't going to be going that high, but it doesn't matter. What this shows is that whether you have, let's say you're at 600 DPS, if you have a 1.5 speed weapon, it doesn't matter what weapon speed, because a 1.5 speed weapon will generate half the threat of a 3 second weapon swing. So there is this idea that slower weapons generate more rage. And I think the reason is because with Fury and the talent Unbridled Wrath, which every time you deal damage with a weapon, you have a chance of generating an extra rage point, which is weird language, actually, because it says an extra. So I'm not sure if that means that it only applies to auto attacks, because yellow attacks do not generate any rage. But I'm pretty sure it does in my own testing a while back. It seemed like kind of a sidetrack here, but Unbridled Wrath it seems to be misleading, because each rank seems to have its own proc chance, and the higher you go in rank, the lower the proc chance. Otherwise, it would be like a linear, like 5 times as much for rank 5, and that's definitely not the case. But I've done whirlwinds and seen like 3 or 4 procs of Unbridled Wrath at the same time, which I suppose it could still just be on each damage to each person, but I'm pretty sure it procs off yellow damage. But that's, like I said, that's kind of a sidetrack. So I think, so if you're Fury and you have Unbridled Wrath, and you know what, I think I can bring that. Let's see if this works. Hey, a little cropped off, but that'll work. Yeah, Unbridled Wrath. It gives you a chance to generate an additional rage point when you deal melee damage with a weapon. I think this is where people can get confused with the fast weapon, because if you have this talent, fast weapons will obviously cause this to proc more often, giving you more rage. But you don't see this in a lot of tank builds. I had a tank build where I had this in there, but from what I understand anyway, I haven't really looked that hard. This seems to be pretty much the standard tank build if you want to be able to generate decent threat. Just mostly because of Impale. And the additional slowing effect is very nice for the improved Thunderclap. The threat isn't great, but, you know, it's something to grab stuff with right away. And you're obviously going to grab the parry. The other source of rage is your shield specialization. And so when you block, you get 1 rage. I'm going to be comparing the weapons, and I'm not going to be working these in because they're so small compared. It'll make sense why it would pretty much muddy the waters. It wouldn't make things any clearer to include these in my comparison between a 1.6 weapon and a 2.6 weapon. So the comparison, let's see if it comes up. Okay, basically took two weapons, each of them 100 DPS weapons, because that's the thing that's in the game right now. Also, making them each 100 DPS makes the math a lot simpler. And we're going to assume the tank is at 1400 attack power, which is kind of a lot for a tank, but a really well-geared tank under raid buff conditions can hit that. I also choose it because it comes out to exactly 100 DPS added on. Because the idea is to get your head around what's happening, and having lots of weird numbers makes that more difficult. So, for example, so the 2.6 weapon at 100 DPS, and then another 100 DPS for AP bonus, means you're getting 520 damage per swing. Now, with the calculator, that shows that you're getting 12 rage per swing, and 23 swings per minute based on your weapon speed, which comes out to 268 rage per minute, because the DPS of these two are the same. So this is where you see the faster weapon generates less rage more frequently, and the slower weapon generates more rage less frequently. And I'm just going to be comparing, if you were to hit Devastate on every cooldown and apply Heroic Strike to each swing. So we're going to add these up. So if it's 520 damage a swing, Devastate does 50% of your weapon damage. So that's 260. Now, if you, we're going to assume we already have 5 stacks, because, and then we're not applying any additional threat because of the Sunder, because once you hit 5 stacks of Sunder, when you apply Devastate, you stop getting that extra 306 threat for applying a Sunder armor. And basically just washing out the things that are going to be the same with both weapons. So the 175 is once you get 35 extra damage for each stack of Sunder armor when you apply a Devastate. So 5 of those is 175. And Devastate itself has 100 additional threat added on. So each Devastate with a 2.6 weapon, with a 100 DPS weapon and 1400 attack power, will generate 535 threat. Now you can get off. I sort of misspoke earlier, because my original thing, I basically had you Devastating on every cooldown, but obviously that's not something that's going to happen in a real raid. So this is set up so that 3 out of 4 of your global cooldowns will be applied to Devastate, because you're going to want to work in some Revenge and Shield Slam and, other stuff. So at 30, which seemed like a good number to grab, that's 16,050 threat per minute. Now at the 2.6 weapon, the 520 is there because, that's the base damage of the swing. But the reason I put these in parentheses and didn't really include them is because this number times this number equals the same number as this number times this number. It's the normalized for how often you're swinging. More damage less often, and less damage more often. So the Heroic Strike adds 176 damage and 194 threat. Suddenly blanking. I might have those reversed, but those are the two. There's additional. I think it's the 194 is the additional threat, and 176. You know what? I could look it up. You know what? It's not that important. And you do it, and you can do it with the 2.6 weapon. You can only apply it to 23 swings per minute. That comes out to 12,000 threat per minute. And I believe this is the auto attack. Wait, where did the 8740 come from? No, because those should be the same. Oh no, this is the auto attack in the parentheses. And then this is the additional threat from applying a Heroic Strike. So it's, it's these together, the 890 times 23 is the 8470. Whereas with the, well, we'll jump down there in a second. So your total threat per minute, 36,520, requiring, and 609 threat per second. So your devastates, 30 of them, 270. So requiring 4.5 rage per second. And the heroic strike cost is 276, requiring 4.6 rage per second. And if you looked at the graph from earlier, even without, if you're taking damage and you're doing at least like 3 to 400 white DPS, you will have enough rage to maintain devastates and heroic strikes and probably some other stuff. When you look down at the 1.6, we kind of went through this before, you're only doing 320 damage per swing because of the slower speed. So that means your devastates are hitting for less. But since so much of the threat of the devastate is the additional damage for 5 stacks and the innate threat added to it, the difference isn't actually that much. It's only 100. And, 30 swings per second again. So you're 3,000 less threat per minute just on the devastates. But here's where you gain it back. Since that's parenthetical, it doesn't, the 176 and the 194, which is the additional damage and the additional threat. Times 37.5, which is how many swings you get off in a minute, equals 13,875, which is almost actually, it is more than 5,000 more threat per minute. It's like 5,400, something like that, from the heroic strikes. Meaning, if you can apply a heroic strike to every auto attack, and you can pay for the whole thing, you will generate about, if you look down here, look up here, about 2,400 more threat per minute. But if you compare these two, that's about 40 more threat per second. Because see, full disclosure, I came into this under the opinion that slow was better. Most likely because I spent a lot of time doing 5-mans, and you are, unless you're getting the stuffings knocked out of you, you're not getting a whole lot of threat from, I did not cover that. Now seems like a good time. Threat or rage from damage taken. You gain 9.1 rage for every 1,000 damage taken. And a typical raid boss, like Prince and Karzan, a well-geared tank will take about 1,000 DPS. So you're getting about 9 rage per second from the damage you're taking, and probably almost that much from damage dealt, unless you are applying a heroic strike. And here's where the heroic strike thing comes into play. Whenever you apply a heroic strike to your auto attack, there's a hidden cost. You'll look at the tooltip and it'll say 12 rage. Okay, that's what it costs. But whatever rage you would have generated from that swing is wiped out. You can't generate rage from yellow attacks. So the hidden cost of applying a heroic strike would be whatever rage you generated from that swing. And if that swing would have generated 600 damage, that just cost you 10 rage. So let's say your auto attack is 600. So basically it's 20. It's heroic strike is far more costly than I think is commonly understood. So basically I found that there's basically no situation where you are going to be taking enough damage. Like at 9.1 rage per second, or rage per 1,000 damage taken, you'd have to be taking 1,000 DPS just to pay for the devastates and heroic strikes with the 2.6 weapon, and you'd have to be taking 1,300 DPS to pay for those with the 1.6 weapon. And like I was saying, keep in mind, you will not be generating the 268 rage per minute from damage dealt because Heroic Strike converts white damage to yellow damage. You also have to keep in mind that you have a cap of 100 rage and any excess rage is lost. The 1.6 weapon can generate more threat than the 2.6 weapon, but you need 11 more Heroic Strikes per minute with the 1.6 weapon to exceed the Devastate threat differential. Basically means to beat out the extra threat you get from having a slow weapon and Devastate, you have to do 10 more or 11 more Heroic Strikes within a minute. But you can only do 14 more because you're only attacking 14 more. You only have 14 more auto attacks per minute with the 1.6 weapon versus the 2.6 weapon. But then, which means between that and paying for your other abilities, you'd have to be taking between 1,500, 1,000, and 2,000 damage per second, which is, I'm not aware of. That's probably more than the tank takes in phase 2 of, oops. Didn't think I was AFK that long. In phase 2 of Prince, you would just be burning your healers out of mana if you were taking that much damage. And I don't think there's any real rage or raid situation where you would be taking enough damage to be able to apply enough Heroic Strikes to generate more threat than the additional threat you get from a slow weapon and Devastate. But it's not as bad as it sounds. Okay, technically, definitively, slow is better in virtually any situation, but the difference, it's not as big as it seems. The threat differential based on weapon speed is tiny. For example, when tanking a raid boss, if you've got Retribution Aura or Thorns, they're probably going to make a bigger difference than the speed of your weapon. Okay, so essentially my conclusion is, although slow is better in 5-mans, the difference all but disappears when tanking a raid boss. For tanking as a protection warrior, using a weapon that you're comfortable with will make a much bigger difference than what speed it happens to be. Just, if you have a weapon you like, don't worry about what speed it is. And for a lot of people, that longer wait, weapon speed is almost like payday for rage. And some people have so if you're used to getting paid weekly and you go get a job that you're getting paid every 2 weeks, for some people that's like really, really enraging, especially if you're kind of a paycheck to paycheck kind of person. And that is a personality type, because I lived with someone who was damn near the top 1%, and I was shocked when she told me that she's going to have to wait till payday to replace the washing machine. And I'm like, you get more in bonuses than I make all year. How are you living paycheck to paycheck? I guess kind of a sidetrack, but paycheck to paycheck is more of a psychology than how much money you're making. So for some people, like having to wait that extra second for the rage to come in, like you really remember that time when you need to do something and you can't, and you're waiting for your weapon swing. And the thing that'll make a much bigger difference than the speed of your weapon is having a... let me kill this. And this. Oh, not that. That. Having a swing timer helps so much. It lets you know... I mean, you can kind of tell by the animation, but having the swing timer really helps you be more effective in applying your Heroic Strikes and cleaves. I think just having this up will probably help you generate more threat than the difference between weapon speed. So I guess, well, this went a little bit quicker than I expected, but the bottom line is the difference is so small that it's not worth considering. I was thinking about this because I was thinking about getting a faster weapon for tanking raid bosses because I know you can apply Heroic Strike more often, and I wanted to see whether it was worth getting a fast tanking weapon just for raid bosses. And it doesn't appear to be worth it. But the difference is so small, like I keep saying. Oh, I think that is it. I am the expert layman. You all have a great day.